Hey guys, FL guy hier zo. Vandaag praten we over een stukje Zuid-Afrikaanse geschiedenis, maar een stukje van onze eigen geschiedenis. En dit is die LM5 geweer, een Zuid-Afrikaanse model van die Galil SAR. So in today's video we're going to go over the LM5 rifle. So let's get started. You might ask yourself, why are we not looking at an FAL? Well, the reason being for that is that the FAL is a really great weapon. I really love the 7.62, but when it comes to 5.56, the LM5 is my go-to rifle. It's also a South African rifle, so it's part of my heritage, culture, and background, so I really want to touch on that awesome rifle. So, let's go into the history of these types of rifles and why they are an icon of South African weapons manufacturing. So in the early 1970s, South Africa was looking at replacing the aging R1 or FAL. The reason being for that was that the R1 made in South Africa had extremely tight tolerances. And in the sands of Namibia and Angola, where these rifles were used, malfunctions were kind of expected due to the tight tolerances. Additionally, they wanted to have a rifle that is short enough to be employed or deployed by infantry troops in a fighting vehicle, such as the Tortort or the Casper, and therefore the R1 was kind of too long for that. Additionally, they figured out that soldiers can carry more ammo on them if they have a rifle with 5.56 instead of 7.62 by 51. And lastly, the 20-round mag capacity of the R1 rifle wasn't ideal for the South African soldier. So the South Africans trialed a bunch of different firearms, and they did trial the M16 and also the Galil made in Israel. And they chose the Galil over any other firearm that they trialed out because it held up the best in the desertish environment they tested these rifles in. It is interesting, or it must be noted, that during that time, both South Africa and Israel were under armed sanctions due to internal politics, and therefore those two nations developed strong arms development ties. And that is a political thing. We're not going to look into that, but just should be noted, and you should be aware of that. It's also a reason why they chose the Galil. So they introduced the Galil in 1974 as the R4. The R4 has a 18.1 inch barrel, comes with a handguard and a bipod. The earlier models had wooden handguards before they were switched over to polymer ones in 1979. After a bunch of years of having the R4s in service and seeing how popular they were and how well they performed, the South Africans decided to develop the R5, which is basically a Galil SAR with a 13.1 inch barrel. Later on, in the mid-80s, they decided to make an even shorter version, the R6, with an even shorter barrel, and that barrel length was 11 inches. So I know there have been a bunch of videos done already, one especially by Ian McCollum from Forgotten Weapons about the R4, R5, and R6 rifles, so I'm not going to go too much into the differences on it. But I'm going to hit on a few very important aspects that people should be aware when they look at the R series rifles and the Galil rifles. So one of the most notable differences is the front sight. The front sight on these rifles are usually way bigger than the ones on the Galil, in order to allow more light to hit the front sight post, and also to make it easier for the soldier to aim down range with these front sights. The other thing that they changed on these rifles were the butt stocks. The butt stocks are basically polymer injected molded stocks. A, they're lighter than the original aluminum ones, and B, they're longer, because the South Africans figured out that the South African, or the Afrikaner or the Boer, has a taller neck or a longer neck than the Israeli counterpart, and it would fit his or the South African's neck better to have a longer stock than the shorter Israeli one. So that's one of the major changes. Another change they did is they designed polymer magazines. These polymer magazines were intended to be magazines you can throw away after using them. However, the South Africans realized that they don't have infinite amount of money to manufacture these mags, and also that they were extremely well liked by the soldiers. So these mags replaced all the steel mags that were in circulation. You can still find these mags in South Africa. They're also being manufactured nowadays, and you can still purchase them. Link is below. Anyhow, so these are the main differences between a South African R series rifle and a Galil rifle. One thing that I wanted to note is that South Africa also developed the civilian version of the R4, R5, and R6, and these are called the LM4, LM5, and LM6 rifle. LM because Littleton Ingenieurswerke, or Littleton Engineering Works, developed these rifles under the umbrella of Armscor, which was a state-owned arms manufacturer. They developed them, they released them to the military, however they were not able to sell them on a commercial market. However, Musgrave, a South African firearm manufacturer and distributor, was able to make a joint venture with Littleton and manufacture these rifles and sell them to the public. You can still find these firearms in South Africa. They're still being sold. However, most of these rifles are from parts kits because Littleton Engineering Works was renamed Denel Land Systems, and they are facing financial difficulties right now, and they sold off their small arms manufacturing to Noble Tech in Pretoria. So all you got is like spare parts and parts kits from which they're assembled from. This rifle was built here in the US. It comes on a Tortort receiver. Tortort is a great company. Link in the bio if you want to check them out. With South African parts on top of it. So it's the closest you can get to a South African firearm here in the US. It also comes with the correct Littleton logo on it, as you can see in this picture. Anyhow, so what makes this rifle so really cool? It is a South African rifle, obviously, so it's really dear to my heart, and I like that part that it is such a unique firearm here in the US. Additionally, it is an extremely precise rifle. I can take this rifle up to 200, 300 yards. It can still hit a target no bigger than 5 inches with iron sights. It also is extremely versatile and works in almost any condition, be it either snow, desert-ish, or whatever situation you're going to have it at. One big downside is that it does not really accept accessories on it. So you really need to dig deep to find accessories for the LM5 rifle. They're not that easily to be found. Some of my companies in South Africa manufacture a small array of firearm accessories, so you can mount some flashlight on them or a rail system for optics. And I'll be reviewing these in the near future as well. It's a great all-rounder. It functions very much like an AK. So you do have these, you do have a paddle down here where you can take the mag out. You angle the mag in and you lock it into place. All right, taking an LM5 rifle apart is really easy. So obviously you're going to check if the weapon is clear. Weapon is clear. You take the mag out. You rack it all the way to the rear so that the hammer is locked back. You take the dust cover off. Take the spring off. Move the bolt carrier out. Now that's a little bit tricky, and I'll show you exactly why it's tricky on my type of rifle to get the bolt carrier out. Take the gas tube out, and you can take the bolt carrier out, or the bolt out of the bolt carrier. So why is it so tricky on my end to take this out? As you can see here, in my rifle, I do have this rubber pad. This rubber pad is uniquely South African, and essentially makes the bolt carrier hit that rubber pad to reduce the recoil that I feel whenever I fire the rifle. So therefore, that little piece of plastic or the little piece of rubber does sometimes hinder the bolt carrier from coming out super easily. But that's like the only drawback. Anyhow, this is how I take an LM5 rifle apart. To put it back together, it's reverse order. Obviously, the gas tube goes in first, locks into place. You're going to put the bolt carrier together. Put a bolt in here, and you put it in like in AK, slide it in here, locks in the forward position. You go in here, drop it into place, let it slide forward, take the spring, put a spring in here. The trick that I learned is that you lock the spring into the rear end of the receiver. You don't fully let it go into its grooves where it sits in there, so just kind of like have it sit on top of the back end of the receiver. That way it's super easy to slap the dust cover on it, so you don't have to wrestle it past the rear part of the spring. And all you got to do is rack the bolt to the rear, as you can see here. Whoops. And there we go, the spring is in place. And it's basically how you put an LM5 rifle together. So there's accessories for these rifles. They make obviously the 35 round polymer mag. They also make these 12 round mags, which are made out of steel. They use to shoot blanks and rifle grenades off the R4 rifle. However, if you take the follower out, when you swap the follower, you can also put regular ammo in them. And that will make the rifle extremely compact and small, and they're very popular in South Africa for concealed carry. As you can see, the profile of this rifle is extremely small or extremely low, and they're great to be carried concealed in a bag or whatever. And these 12 round mags are also available here in the US, linked below. Lastly, the South Africans also came up with mag coupling ideas, and they're basically two straps with a polymer block in between, which enables you to couple two mags together so that you can carry the double capacity of 70 rounds in your LM5 rifle. As you can see here, they can do work, they're quite stable, and they are very hard to find, unfortunately, because the manufacturer went out of business in 1994. So I hope that you enjoyed this short video on the LM5 rifle, and I hope that you will find an LM5 rifle eventually here in the US or wherever you live at, and that you come to love these 5.56 rifles. I know it's on the FAL, but it is a great piece of history, and it is a really iconic Cold War rifle. Many nations in the world use Galil or LEW Vektor rifles, such as this one, and have been all over the world. And lucky us, they still make them in various manufacturers here in the US and overseas. So baie dankie en tot volgende keer weer. Tot ziens.